worked tremendously hard as farmers and never went to high school. Of his two brothers and one sister, Jake is the only one who went to college, going to Emporia State, where he earned a BA in foreign language and a master's in botany. Finally, he earned a PhD at the University of Minnesota in ornithology. He came to Breck in 1978 under the suggestion of Maya Tester's father, who worked at the university and saw promise in him as a teacher. By the mid-80s, he had been named a master teacher, Breck's most revered teaching honor. We are incredibly lucky that he has chosen to spend his 30-plus years with us. Please join me in welcoming to the stage Dr. Jacob Zimmer.
The good thing, testing, do you hear me? I can't hear myself. The good thing about being up here is I can't see you very well, and I'm rather nervous. It's a lot easier being in class. If you ask your teachers what they most wish for you, the list is likely to be pretty long and thoughtful. My colleagues care a lot about you. Well, I guess I do too. One theme that commonly appears on such a wish list is that we hope to instill in our students a love of learning, a passion to know, what I prefer to call active curiosity. I've written more than once about a senior applying to great schools, saying that they show a genuine passion to learn for learning's sake. Don't misunderstand me. Learning because it will help you reach an important goal is not a bad thing. It's just that after all these years, I've come to the conclusion that learning something new or more deeply is always fulfilling. Hard work sometimes, but always worthwhile, even when you don't see how the knowledge might be useful. I want to talk about my personal experience at the risk of this seeming self-centered. I'm the topic that I guess I know the most about. My whole life I've been curious, wanting to know about nearly everything. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to brag on myself. In fact, if it came down to a Jeopardy match, I'd choose Mr. Peterson over me any day. But the thing is, if you keep your mind open, question, and seek to know what others before you have learned, over a few decades, what you know starts to add up. Curiosity can get you into trouble. There must be a good reason for the expression about curiosity killing the cat, but I'm going to leave out my trouble stories at this point and save those for another speech. How we use knowledge matters on all kinds of levels, personally and in the way it may affect others. In 8th grade, acting like a know-it-all resulted in me being called the professor. My classmates didn't really mean that as a compliment, and frankly, it was pretty hurtful, although I'm pretty happy with the moniker now. Okay, it is working. See, I'm confused. There we go. This is Kismet that you just heard about. It was my fate to grow up in the town of Kismet, a town of about 250 people. Kismet, of course, means fate. This is the entire downtown. If you only look on the surface of this community, there doesn't appear to be much of interest. There are lots of farm fields, pastures, and the occasional windmill, and lots of open country. When I lived there, it was a small town with a small school. Just to give you an idea, my 6th grade class grew to 15 because of the addition of 6 new students from a country school that was a one-room school. It didn't seem like much of a place to me back then, but my journeys in life have been rich because people encouraged me to be a learner. My parents, who only finished 8th grade themselves, knew learning was important. They always supported me and valued me for being a good student. I had teachers who pushed me to work harder and to avoid being cocky, because sometimes I thought I was pretty smart. They believed in me and helped me learn about the world beyond Kismet. Perhaps the subtlety of Western Kansas contributed to my curiosity, wanting to know about nearly everything because at the time there seemed to be so little. When I was 4, I conducted what may have been my first science experiment. We had a big harvester ant den like this one in the corner of our yard. which I watch from time to time. One day I decided to see what would happen if I drove a tricycle smack in the middle of the den. I think it was a pretty sophisticated question for my age. I learned some important animal behavior that day. I did get ants in my pants. Their bites smarted. But I learned about defensive behavior of animals. I figured out that if you wait until dark, the ants disappear underground, and I was able to retrieve my trike. I like to think that was the day that I launched my science career. I flirted with science off and on after that, but didn't commit to that path until I was a junior in college. In between, I pursued a passion for speaking other languages, reading literature, and trying to write really bad poetry. I vividly remember the moment, that incredible May morning that changed my life and launched my career as a biologist. At the time, I was majoring in Spanish and French. It was all about seeing this bird and realizing that an exciting world had just been opened up and my passion from years ago had just been reignited. So much had been missed in the grasslands of western Kansas. The incredible birds like this lesser prairie chicken. And the multitude of plants that I just thought were weeds and grass before became the topic of my master's thesis. Take a look at the numbers here. That's a lot of species that I had overlooked all those years until I came back curious to see what I had been missing. That simple little American redstart led me to complete my master's and PhD in biology and to pursue birds and other wildlife on all continents but Antarctica. That's waiting for retirement. Your parents may not be very happy with you if you change directions in college as much as I did, but I think, like ecosystems, life is richer with diversity. In science class, I try to teach that curiosity is the root of good questions that lead to new and sometimes great discoveries. It was curiosity that produced the knowledge that allowed scientists to know that these apparently simple bacterial cells invented the rotary engine in the form of the flagellum and ATP generating turbines billions of years ago. This simple diagram of cell structure is not all that different from what I learned in biology back in the 1960s. Although my students may lament that they are required to learn so much more, it's hard to imagine not being impressed by what we now know about cell structure and function. Particularly important, I believe, are those who ask questions that challenge current thinking, that take a risk, and that ultimately change what we teach and learn. Let me give a couple of examples. Dr. Lynn Margulis at the University of Chicago in the 1960s produced convincing evidence that eukaryotic cell organelles originated from symbiotic relationships between bacteria and other evolving larger cells. Her work led to important future studies, some of which supported her ideas and some of which refuted her ideas. But her curiosity engendered curiosity in others and has changed how cells are perceived by us today. Dr. Sarah Hrdy discovered infanticide, not a particularly pleasant topic, as a male strategy for causing females to become reproductively available in the Hahnemann languor. This is a phenomenon that was missed by primatologists for many years before her, and it's widely thought that she was able to see the social structure of languors differently, in large part because of a different gender perspective. We now know that this is a fairly common behavior and occurs in such animals as lions. The Genome Project, which formally began in 1990, was expected to take more than 30 years to complete. Thanks in large part to the novel ideas of J. Craig Venter, and it's probably need to be said also his ego, the project was completed in 13 years. And now, on the 10th anniversary of completion of the project, we're just beginning to understand the impact of that knowledge. At the rate technology is advancing, Predictions suggest that sequencing of an individual genome may be possible for as little as $1,000 in a few years. What you learn about this field will be important to you. How we use the knowledge definitely matters. These discoveries will influence your lives. My final example deals with challenges to the widely held principles of genetics. There is now convincing evidence that diet, smoking, drug use, environmental factors experienced by your parents and even your grandparents can change the way inherited genes behave in you. This means that your lifestyle may influence your children in more ways than you imagined. All these ideas, frankly, make me a bit giddy. I have a little more studying to do, so let me conclude with the following thought. Who knows whether you will become famous or make a difference in a quiet way? But above all, be a learner. Follow your passions. Your life will be richer, and so will ours. Thank you.